Welcome to Secrets of History at Night. We journey through the past to help you drift off easily and productively. Be sure to subscribe and give us a like, as by the end of this narrative, you'll be sound asleep. Close your eyes. Our story is about to begin. Around 4 billion years ago, within our planet's primordial fiery ocean, something truly extraordinary emerged: life. From minuscule, barely discernible bacteria, through a vast expanse of billions of years, arose beings capable of contemplating their origins, posing questions, and ultimately mastering the planet. It was merely 300,000 years ago that Homo sapiens, our species, came into being. But why us? What enabled Homo sapiens to endure ice ages, displace other ancient humanoids, and become the custodians of Earth? Today, we embark on a captivating expedition across eras, teeming with dramatic events and astonishing transformations to unveil the ultimate mystery: how and why we came to be. Approximately 13,800,000,000 years ago, an event occurred that is now known as the Big Bang. At this singular moment, all the matter that would eventually form the universe was compressed into an infinitesimally dense and intensely hot state, a singularity. In the fraction of a second following the Big Bang, the universe began to expand and cool rapidly, allowing the formation of the very first subatomic particles: protons, neutrons, and electrons. Within mere minutes, the simplest atoms, predominantly hydrogen and helium, had coalesced. Around 200 million years post-Big Bang, vast clouds of gas under the force of gravity began to coalesce, giving birth to the first stars. These initial stars were exceptionally massive, composed almost entirely of hydrogen and helium. They existed for a relatively short duration, and upon completing their life cycles, they detonated as supernovae, scattering the first heavy elements into the surrounding cosmos. It was the cataclysmic explosions of these stars that enriched interstellar space with heavier elements, providing the fundamental building blocks for planetary systems, including our own solar system. Our Earth coalesced approximately 4 billion years ago from a swirling nebula of interstellar dust and gas that orbited the nascent sun. Initially, our planet was a molten sphere, a globe of magma seas under a dense atmosphere composed of water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, ammonia, and hydrogen sulfide. Frequent collisions with comets and asteroids gradually delivered water and organic compounds to Earth's surface. Around 4,300,000,000 years ago, Earth cooled sufficiently for atmospheric water vapor to condense, giving rise to the first oceans. It was within these oceans that one of the planet's most pivotal events took place: the origin of life. Current scientific understanding suggests that life arose from complex chemical reactions between organic compounds dissolved in water. The energy sources for these reactions may have included lightning, solar ultraviolet radiation, and heat from deep-sea hydrothermal vents, essentially volcanic systems at the bottom of ancient oceans. The earliest life forms were microscopic, single-celled organisms lacking a nucleus, known as prokaryotes. These include bacteria and archaea, both of which can thrive in extreme environments. The oldest undisputed fossil evidence of such organisms, found in rock formations in Australia and Greenland, dates back approximately 3,700,000,000 years. However, there are even older, debated findings, potentially up to 4,100,000,000 years old, discovered in Canada and Greenland. Their classification as biological entities remains a subject of active scientific discussion. Approximately 2.5 billion years ago marked a crucial turning point. The first cyanobacteria, capable of photosynthesis, emerged. These organisms began releasing oxygen as a byproduct of their metabolic processes. The widespread accumulation of oxygen in the atmosphere, often referred to as the Great Oxidation Event, commenced around 2,400,000,000 years ago. This process unfolded gradually over hundreds of millions of years, leading to a progressive enrichment of Earth's atmosphere with oxygen, thereby paving the way for the evolution of more complex and diverse life forms. Roughly 540 million years ago, one of the most significant and enigmatic events in Earth's history occurred, now known as the Cambrian explosion of life. Within a remarkably short geological time frame, approximately 30 million years, a vast array of diverse life forms emerged on our planet, many of which developed hard skeletons and protective exoskeletons for the first time. Prior to the Cambrian period, life on Earth consisted predominantly of single-celled organisms, simple algae, and rudimentary multicellular creatures such as sponges and jellyfish. However, the Cambrian witnessed an unprecedented surge in the diversity and complexity of organisms inhabiting the ancient seas. During this era, virtually all major animal phyla known today emerged, including arthropods, mollusks, echinoderms, the earliest ancestors of vertebrates, and many others. One of the most iconic representations of the Cambrian explosion is the renowned Burgess Shale fauna, whose remains were unearthed in Canada. These remarkable fossils are preserved with extraordinary detail, offering scientists a literal glimpse into the creatures that populated ancient marine environments. Among them were truly peculiar beings. For instance, the predatory Anomalocarice, reaching about 1 meter in length, bore a resemblance to a giant shrimp and possessed unique grasping appendages armed with spines, which it used to capture prey. Hallucigenia, a worm-like creature with prominent defensive spines along its back and delicate legs underneath, also merits mention. Interestingly, scientists initially struggled to ascertain its orientation, often depicting it upside down. However, the correct posture of this creature has now been definitively established. Another astonishing organism was Opabinia, a marine dweller with 5 eyes and a long, flexible proboscis. The reasons behind this rapid proliferation of new life forms continue to be debated among scientists. Prominent hypotheses include changes in the chemical composition of the oceans and the attainment of critical oxygen levels. Although oxygen levels began to rise long before the Cambrian, it was during this period that its concentration first reached levels conducive to the development and flourishing of complex multicellular animals. Another significant factor is believed to be the advent of active predation, initiating an evolutionary arms race among animals, compelling them to develop protective coverings, exoskeletons, and more complex body structures. The Cambrian explosion laid the foundation for the subsequent evolutionary development of all multicellular life on Earth. Although many of the animals that appeared during this period eventually went extinct, it was then that the fundamental body plans for virtually all modern animals, including our distant ancestors, were established. Approximately 375 million years ago, events transpired that irrevocably altered the trajectory of life on our planet. During this period, certain groups of fish, began to gradually abandon their aquatic habitats, venturing onto land. Naturally, this transition was not instantaneous. The shift from a purely aquatic existence to terrestrial life required millions of years and numerous incremental adaptations. The earliest vertebrates to conquer land were the primitive tetrapods, four-limbed creatures. Their ancestors were ancient lobe-finned fish, such as Tiktaalik. This species already possessed robust fins, akin to limbs, which it could use to push off the substrate and even emerge onto land briefly to traverse between water bodies. Gradually, these fins evolved into limbs, and rudimentary lungs became increasingly adept at extracting oxygen from the air. It was these types of animals that provided the foundation for the subsequent evolution of true terrestrial vertebrates. Later, around 320 million years ago, another crucial group of animals, the amniotes, evolved from early tetrapods. Their most significant evolutionary achievement was the amniotic egg, protected by a leathery shell and filled with fluid. This innovation liberated these animals from their dependence on water for reproduction, allowing them to colonize diverse terrestrial environments. Modern reptiles, birds, and mammals belong to this lineage. The age of reptiles was facilitated by the Permian-Triassic extinction event, which occurred approximately 252 million years ago and eradicated about 95% of all species on the planet. Over the subsequent 20 million years, land was colonized and dominated by reptile groups such as the therapsids, mammal-like reptiles, and the ancestors of mammals, as well as the archosaurs, the progenitors of dinosaurs and crocodiles. The first dinosaurs appeared around 230 million years ago during the Triassic period. For the next 150 million years, they became the dominant animals on the planet, diversifying into an astonishing array of forms and sizes. Among them were the colossal herbivorous sauropods, such as Diplodocus and Brachiosaurus, the carnivorous theropods, like the renowned Tyrannosaurus and Allosaurus, and numerous other remarkable creatures. It is important to note that while the majority of dinosaurs perished, one group perseveres and thrives to this day, being their direct descendants. Modern birds are directly descended from small, feathered theropod dinosaurs, and are, from a scientific perspective, living dinosaurs themselves. However, in the shadow of the dinosaurs, creatures destined to eventually fill their ecological niches had long been present. The first mammals emerged approximately 200 million years ago, and they were quite small, comparable in size to modern mice or shrews. For an extended period, they coexisted with dinosaurs, leading predominantly nocturnal lives and avoiding larger predators. 66 million years ago, the Earth faced another cataclysm. An asteroid approximately 15 kilometers in diameter struck the area of present-day Mexico in the Yucatan Peninsula region. The impact unleashed catastrophic forces, triggering tsunamis, widespread fires, and a global nuclear winter that lasted for several years, blocking sunlight and drastically lowering global temperatures. This event, known as the Paleogene extinction, proved fatal for most dinosaurs. Nearly all dinosaur species, with the exception of birds, became extinct. This catastrophic event cleared the path for small and unassuming mammals. Following the demise of large predators and dominant herbivores, ecological niches were vacated and began to be actively occupied and exploited by mammals. This ushered in a period of rapid mammalian evolution. They quickly grew larger, more diverse, and more numerous, colonizing virtually all ecosystems, from sweltering tropical forests to frigid plains. An interesting fact: while life on land offered numerous advantages to vertebrates, not all creatures embraced it. Some groups of tetrapods, through evolutionary processes, decided to return to the water. This is how, approximately 50 million years ago, modern whales and dolphins evolved from terrestrial ancestors whose ancient relatives gradually transformed their limbs back into fins, readapting to life in the marine realm. Around 65 million years ago, as Earth slowly recovered from the global catastrophe, the era of mammalian flourishing commenced. During this period, the newly available ecological niches were populated by an incredibly diverse array of animals, among whom the first primates, the distant ancestors of modern apes and humans, soon appeared. The earliest primates emerged approximately 55 million years ago, at the dawn of the Eocene epoch. At that time, Earth's climate was significantly warmer and more humid than it is today. Vast expanses of the planet were covered by dense tropical rainforests, and the average temperature was approximately 14 degrees Celsius higher. The warm and humid climate was ideally suited for the proliferation of trees, lianas, shrubs, and a variety of plants, forming layered, complex, and abundant ecosystems. It was within these tropical forests, amidst the branches and dense foliage, that small animals, comparable in size to modern squirrels or small monkeys, first appeared. These early primates were adapted for arboreal life. They possessed flexible and prehensile limbs with opposable thumbs, allowing them to firmly grip branches, and long tails that provided additional stability while navigating trees. Their eyes were forward-facing, providing binocular vision, essential for accurately judging distances when leaping from branch to branch. The diet of early primates consisted of fruits, flowers, leaves, and insects, which were abundant in these forests. Gradually, around 30 million years ago, the planet's climate began to change. Temperatures started to decline, and precipitation decreased, leading to a gradual reduction in the extent of tropical rainforests and an expansion of open landscapes, such as savannas and woodlands. These changes were particularly pronounced in Africa, which became the crucible for early primates, adapting to new environmental conditions. Approximately 20 million years ago, in the dense and humid forests of Africa, a distinct group of primates emerged, known as hominoids, or apes. These creatures were the closest relatives in the evolutionary lineage that would eventually lead to humans. One of the most notable was Proconsul, which inhabited the region of modern-day East Africa. Proconsul was of medium size with a body length of about 1 meter and a weight ranging from 15 to 40 kilograms. In appearance, it resembled a transitional form between modern monkeys and apes, such as chimpanzees. Proconsul lacked a tail, aligning it more closely with modern apes. Its arms and legs were long and robust enough to confidently navigate tree branches quadrupedally. Proconsul's skull featured prominent jaws with large teeth, perfectly suited for a varied diet including fruits, leaves, and possibly small animals. Another significant species was Dryopithecus, which lived approximately 14 to 9 million years ago across Africa and Eurasia. This animal was larger than Proconsul, with a weight potentially reaching 40 to 50 kilograms. Dryopithecus already bore a noticeable resemblance to modern apes, like chimpanzees and gorillas, owing to its larger and sturdier build. Its limbs were well adapted for vertical climbing and arboreal locomotion, bringing it closer to modern apes. Its teeth and jaws were powerful, suited for processing the tough, plant-based diet characteristic of humid forests. The environmental conditions within Africa's tropical forests at that time were nearly ideal for the development and flourishing of early hominoid primates. The dense canopy provided ample food and shelter from large terrestrial predators, while the stable, warm, and humid climate fostered high populations and species diversity. Another remarkable creature coexisting with ancient hominoids was Gigantopithecus, the largest known ape species in Earth's history. According to current scientific data, Gigantopithecus emerged much earlier than previously thought, approximately 8 million years ago. It reached its greatest distribution and diversity around 2 million years ago, primarily inhabiting the forested regions of South and Southeast Asia. The size of Gigantopithecus was truly impressive. When standing on its hind limbs, these creatures could reach approximately 3 meters in height, with adult individuals weighing between 100, and 600 kilograms. Thus, in terms of size and mass, Gigantopithecus significantly surpassed not only modern gorillas, but all other primates that have ever existed on the planet. Externally, Gigantopithecus resembled gorillas but was far more massive and larger. Based on fossil remains, they possessed powerful jaws and enormous molar teeth, perfectly adapted for processing tough plant matter such as bamboo, tree shoots, leaves, and fruits. These massive teeth, several times larger than human teeth, have been the primary source of scientific information, as nearly all known discoveries consist of teeth and jaw fragments. Complete skeletons have yet to be found, adding to their enigmatic nature. Gigantopithecus was predominantly terrestrial and moved quadrupedally, much like modern gorillas. They spent most of their time on the ground, but could occasionally rear up on their hind legs to reach high branches for fruits or leaves. This was likely a behavior driven by necessity rather than their typical mode of locomotion. These giant apes inhabited humid tropical and subtropical forests, where they could easily find ample food and shelter from potential threats. Judging by the structure of their jaws and teeth, they were exclusively herbivorous, favoring fiber-rich diets. They coexisted with several species of ancient hominids, including early members of the Homo genus, such as Homo erectus, who also inhabited Asia. It is highly probable that direct conflicts between them were minimal, as they occupied different ecological niches and had distinct dietary preferences. Hominids were more omnivorous and utilized stone tools for hunting and food processing, whereas Gigantopithecus specialized solely in plant-based foods. However, around 100,000 years ago, Gigantopithecus completely disappeared. Scientists continue to debate the precise reasons for this extinction. The most probable and primary factor is considered to be gradual climate change, leading to a reduction in the familiar forest territories upon which they heavily relied. The loss of habitat and dwindling food resources proved fatal for these enormous primates. Additional contributing factors to their extinction may have included competition with other animals, including hominids, who were increasingly occupying new territories and exploiting resources more efficiently, although this factor is not considered primary. But approximately 7 million years ago, ancient hominids faced a new, significant challenge. Earth's climate gradually grew cooler, and land masses underwent transformations due to global geological processes, such as the uplift of mountain ranges and shifts in ocean currents. All of this led to a substantial reduction in dense tropical forests and the proliferation of more open landscapes, savannas, and woodlands. The dense forests, which had served as the home and refuge for our arboreal ancestors for millions of years, were now rapidly giving way to vast open plains covered with grass and scattered trees. These changes had a profound impact on the lives of ancient hominids, our distant ancestors. Whereas previously, they could spend almost all their time in trees, finding both food and shelter from predators, they were now compelled to adapt to entirely new circumstances. The open savannas could no longer provide the same reliable protection as dense tree canopies, forcing these animals to move across the ground in search of food, water, and shelter. It was within these new conditions that our ancestors began to gradually walk upright. The earliest evidence of bipedalism dates back to ancient species such as Sahelanthropus and Ardipithecus, who lived approximately 6 to 7 million years ago. Their bipedalism was not as pronounced as that of later members of our genus. However, anatomical adaptations for an upright posture were already beginning to form. The transition to bipedalism was not driven by a single cause, but by several factors simultaneously, and scientists continue to actively debate various hypotheses. One of the primary reasons is believed to be an improved view of the surroundings in the open savanna, allowing ancient hominids to spot predators and prey from a distance. Another significant hypothesis is energy efficiency when traversing long distances across open terrain. Thermoregulation may also have played a crucial role. An upright posture significantly reduced exposure to direct sunlight, which was highly advantageous in hot climates. Some academics also put forth theories regarding the advantages of transporting food over long distances, the ease of navigating shallow waters, and the possibilities for social interactions facilitated by free hands and gestures. It is most probable that bipedalism emerged as a consequence of a confluence of these elements. Another significant benefit of upright posture was the liberation of the forelimbs. Hands were then able to be utilized for carrying sustenance, offspring, and various items, which greatly enhanced the capacity for survival and expansion into new territories. The ability to fashion and actively employ stone tools emerged considerably later than the initial indications of bipedalism. The most ancient verified traces of the use of such implements date back to approximately 2,600,000 years ago, associated with the so-called Aldawan culture. Naturally, the transition to upright walking did not occur instantaneously or as a single event. It was a gradual progression spanning hundreds of thousands and perhaps even millions of years. The earliest hominids who began to stand on two legs still retained the capability to move on all fours, particularly when ascending trees or in situations demanding maximum speed and agility. However, over time, anatomical adaptations became increasingly pronounced and irreversible. The structure of the pelvis, the alignment of the spine, and the formation of the lower limbs gradually adapted to the sustained locomotion on 2 feet. Approximately 5 million years ago, among the early bipedal hominids, beings appeared that bore a far stronger resemblance to ourselves. Among the most recognized and significant representatives of this group were Ardipithecus and Australopithecus. Ardipithecus existed around 4.5 million years ago in eastern Africa. The most famous member of this genus is Ardipithecus ramidus, affectionately nicknamed Ardi. These beings were of short stature, standing at about 120 centimeters and weighing approximately 50 kilograms. In appearance, they resembled a blend of modern apes and early humans, exhibiting characteristics common to both groups. Their cranial capacity was relatively modest, around 350 cubic centimeters, which is roughly one-third the size of a modern human's brain. Ardipithecus could already stand and move confidently on two legs, although they retained anatomical features, suggesting they still spent a substantial portion of their time in trees. One of their most striking and distinctive traits was the unique structure of their foot. The big toe was significantly abducted, akin to the opposable thumb of modern arboreal primates, allowing them to grasp branches. Such a foot demonstrated intermediate characteristics between an arboreal lifestyle and terrestrial bipedalism. Consequently, Ardipithecus could walk on the ground on two legs, though they did so less efficiently and with less confidence than later Australopithecines. Their arms were long and quite robust, further indicating their ability to climb trees effectively and maintain a firm grip on branches. Australopithecus emerged somewhat later, from approximately 4 million to 1 million years ago, and represented more advanced hominids. The most celebrated species, represented by the renowned discovery of the female nicknamed Lucy, dates back to about 3,200,000 years ago. The height of Australopithecines typically ranged around 130 centimeters, with weights varying between 30 and 50 kilograms. They possessed a robust and stocky build, with a broad pelvis and strong lower limbs, enabling them to move on two legs with considerably more assurance and efficiency. The brain of Australopithecines was also larger, yet still approximately half the size of a modern human's brain. They predominantly led terrestrial lives, although they did not entirely abandon trees, especially for rest and refuge from predators. Their diet was primarily plant-based, consisting of fruits, seeds, roots, and leaves. However, Australopithecines were not strictly herbivorous, but rather omnivorous, with a preference for plant matter. This means they could occasionally consume small animals, insects, and even scavenge if the opportunity arose. The teeth of Australopithecines were massive, featuring large and sturdy molars, ideally suited for grinding tough plant material. The existence of early hominids was far from easy. In the open savannas, they faced threats from numerous predators, such as saber-toothed cats, large hyenas, and immense birds of prey. To survive these conditions, they had to form small social groups where they cared for one another, defended themselves, and collectively searched for food. It was precisely this way of life that fostered the further development of social skills, communication, and a gradual increase in intelligence. These species represent crucial milestones in human evolution. It is Australopithecus that is considered by scientists to be among the key candidates for the direct ancestors of the genus Homo. Although the precise details of this evolutionary connection are still actively researched and debated. Approximately 2,500,000 years ago, a new species of hominid emerged in Africa, marking a pivotal step towards modern humans. This was Homo habilis, the skilled man, the first representative of our own genus. It is with this species that a new era in human evolution begins, an epoch of stone tools and the first noticeable shifts in lifestyle. Homo habilis was a relatively short being, standing between 100 and 140 centimeters tall and weighing between 30 and 50 kilograms. Externally, they still resembled Australopithecines, but anatomically, they were more advanced. A particularly notable distinction was the increased cranial capacity, which was now around 700 cubic centimeters, roughly 1.5 times larger than that of Australopithecines. This represented the first significant step towards enhancing the cognitive abilities of our ancestors. The most important and unique achievement of Homo habilis, which made them famous, was the creation and use of the first stone tools. Archaeologists attribute these tools to the so-called Oldowan culture, named after the Olduvai Gorge in East Africa, where the first specimens were discovered. The tools were simple, crudely worked stone flakes created by striking one stone against another. Despite their primitiveness, these tools were incredibly effective. With their aid, ancient hominids could butcher animal carcasses, crack bones to extract nutritious marrow, process plant foods, and even defend themselves. The diet of Homo habilis consisted not only of plant-based foods, but also significantly included meat from animals, obtained through hunting or, more commonly, scavenged from the kills of predators. Their primary hunting or gathering targets were small and medium-sized mammals, such as antelopes, gazelles, and hares, as well as various birds and reptiles. They had to compete for food resources with other hominids, such as Paranthropus, robust herbivorous Australopithecines, as well as with various species of predators and scavengers, including large hyenas, saber-toothed cats, and vultures. Life in the African savannas of that era was arduous and fraught with danger. Predators constantly posed a threat to the small groups. Therefore, a communal lifestyle, social cooperation, and the development of tool-making became the most crucial survival mechanisms. Living in small groups of 10 to 20 individuals, Homo habilis could more effectively defend themselves against predators and more successfully search for and obtain food. The social organization of these hominids involved rudimentary forms of labor division. Some group members were responsible for finding and selecting suitable stones for tool production. Others butchered animal carcasses, while a third group guarded the group or gathered plant foods and water. Thus, early humans maximized the use of available resources and minimized the risks associated with acquiring sustenance. The discovery of fire and the ability to maintain constant fires were not yet available to Homo habilis, so nighttime remained a period of heightened danger. As darkness fell, they sought shelter among large rock overhangs, avoiding encounters with nocturnal predators. However, hominid evolution did not stand still, and approximately 1,900,000 years ago, a new, significantly more advanced human species appeared on the African continent. This was Homo erectus, or the upright man, who became the next important step on the path to modern humans. It was with this species that a new era began, when our ancestors started confidently conquering not only surrounding territories, but also new continents. Homo erectus differed significantly from its predecessors, primarily in height and physique. The average height of an adult representative was approximately 160 to 180 centimeters, making them noticeably taller and more slender. Their weight ranged from 50 to 70 kilograms, and their body proportions were already close to modern human ones. The brain also continued to increase, reaching a volume of 800 to 1,000 cubic centimeters. One of the most significant and revolutionary achievements of Homo erectus was the mastery of fire. Approximately 1 million years ago, these ancient humans learned not only to utilize fire, which originated from forest fires or lightning strikes, but also to maintain it and subsequently to start it themselves. This innovation completely transformed their way of life. Fire provided warmth, protection from predators, and the ability to process food. Thermally processed food became easier to chew and digest, allowing for the acquisition of much more energy and nutrients. This, in turn, contributed to further brain growth and the development of the organism. Homo erectus were also the first true travelers. Approximately 1,800,000 years ago, they began to venture beyond the African continent and spread to other regions of the planet. This was the first major wave of hominid migration out of Africa, marking the beginning of global human dispersal. The first new territories reached by Homo erectus were the regions of modern-day Georgia, China, and Southeast Asia. The most ancient findings confirming their presence outside of Africa were discovered in Dmanisi, and their age is estimated at approximately 1 million years, 800,000 years. Later, Homo erectus reached the territory of China and the islands of Indonesia. Subsequently, they also spread to other regions of Eurasia, including the territory of modern-day Europe. These incredibly long and complex journeys through various climatic zones were made possible by a high level of adaptability and the ability to use fire, primitive tools, as well as increased social skills. They moved in small groups, cooperating closely with each other in food acquisition, shelter organization, and protection from threats. It was Homo erectus who first created relatively sophisticated stone tools belonging to the Acheulean culture. Their famous Acheulean hand axes, carefully crafted stone axes, and points became versatile tools for hunting, butchering, gathering, and building shelters. These tools allowed for more efficient food acquisition and adaptation to new, harsher living conditions in different regions of the planet. However, global dispersal was not without its challenges and dangers. They encountered new types of predators and harsh climatic conditions, especially in the colder regions of Eurasia. In Europe, they had to coexist with large predators such as cave bears and lions, and also hunt large herbivores like deer, bison, and even elephants to sustain themselves. Their ability to maintain fire and use it for protection and warmth proved to be a crucial survival factor in such difficult conditions. Approximately 2,500,000 years ago, a period of drastic climatic changes began on Earth, known as the Pleistocene epoch. The cause of the onset of glacial periods was a combination of natural factors, primarily the Milankovitch cycles. These are regular recurring changes in Earth's orbit around the Sun and the position of its axis of rotation. These cycles are named after the Serbian scientist who first described their influence on the planet's climate in detail. The Milankovitch cycles include three main components. The first is the variation in the eccentricity of Earth's orbit around the Sun. The second is the change in the tilt angle of Earth's axis relative to its orbital plane. which varies from approximately 22 to 24.5 degrees with a period of about 41,000 years. The third component is precession, or the slow rotation of Earth's axis itself, with a period of about 26,000 years. These periodic changes lead to fluctuations in the amount of solar energy reaching different parts of the planet at different times of the year, causing global cooling and warming. In conjunction with fluctuations in solar activity and changes in ocean currents caused by tectonic plate movement, these processes significantly impacted the planet's climate. As a result, the Earth's climate cooled drastically, and the planet entered an era of prolonged glacial periods, alternating with relatively short, warm periods. Vast areas in North America, Europe, and Asia were covered by thick layers of ice, and global sea levels significantly decreased due to the large amount of water frozen in glaciers. These dramatic climatic changes had a profound impact on flora and fauna. Extensive forests and humid jungles retreated, giving way to cold steppes, tundras, and open plains covered with tough grasses and shrubs. Such a shift in landscapes significantly affected the composition of animal life, with thermophilic species being replaced by animals well adapted to harsh conditions, such as mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, giant and reindeer, and bison. Along with them, large predators also appeared, such as cave lions, giant hyenas, and saber-toothed cats. In these new conditions, ancient hominids faced new challenges that demanded significant adaptations. Approximately 800,000 years ago, a new species of ancient human, known as Homo heidelbergensis, appeared in Europe and Africa. It is this species that most scientists consider the direct ancestor of both Neanderthals and modern humans. Homo heidelbergensis already bore a strong resemblance to us. Adult individuals reached a height of approximately 170 centimeters, possessed a strong, robust physique, and a substantial cranial capacity that was nearly on par with that of modern humans. Their faces were large and massive, with prominent brow ridges, wide nasal openings, and forward jutting jaws. However, compared to earlier species, their features were considerably softened. One of the most significant characteristics of Homo heidelbergensis was their ability to hunt large animals effectively. Using sophisticated stone tools, they hunted large herbivores such as bison, large deer, horses, and even elephants and rhinoceroses. Such hunting required not only strength and agility, but also complex collective actions, coordination, and a high degree of social organization. In addition to hunting, they actively gathered fruits, nuts, seeds, and plant roots, supplementing their diet and providing their bodies with essential nutrients. Even then, the first signs of systematic settlement organization appeared, with sites located near water sources and food supplies. For protection against cold and predators, Heidelbergensis people constructed simple shelters using tree branches, large animal bones, hides, and stones. Archaeological findings indicate that some groups regularly returned to the same campsites, suggesting the emergence of settled lifestyle traditions. One of their most crucial skills was the use and maintenance of fire. They made fires for cooking, warmth, illumination, and deterring predators. This gave them a significant advantage as it allowed them to inhabit the more northerly regions of Europe, where survival without fire was virtually impossible. It is Homo heidelbergensis that is considered the key link between early Homo representatives and later species, including Neanderthals and modern humans. Approximately 400,000 years ago, a new species of ancient humans emerged in Europe, becoming one of our most enigmatic and well known relatives. Initially, Neanderthals appeared in Europe, from where they later spread to the western regions of Asia. The earliest findings attributed to early forms of Neanderthals date back to approximately 350,000 years ago. However, typical classical Neanderthals with their characteristic, clearly defined anatomical features formed somewhat later, around 200,000 years ago. These ancient hominids were perfectly adapted to the harsh conditions of the glacial periods and became one of the most developed human forms ever to exist on Earth before the appearance of modern humans. Neanderthals were robust and physically very strong beings. Their height typically reached 160 centimeters, and their weight could reach 80 kilograms or even more. They possessed powerful musculature, a broad chest, strong short limbs, massive skulls with prominent brow ridges, and noticeably protruding noses. These bodily characteristics help them conserve heat and survive effectively in the cold climates of glacial Europe and Asia. The brain of Neanderthals was quite large and even slightly larger than that of modern humans. However, it is important to emphasize that a larger brain size does not necessarily equate to higher intelligence compared to modern humans. Despite their large size, the Neanderthal brain had a somewhat different internal structure, which may have influenced the nuances of their intellect, perception of the world, and behavior. Nevertheless, the high level of brain development was reflected in their culture and way of life. The culture of Neanderthals was remarkably developed and diverse. They actively used sophisticated stone tools belonging to the Mousterian culture. These tools were more advanced and specialized than those of their predecessors. Neanderthals crafted spear points, knives, scrapers for hide processing, hand axes, and other multifunctional implements. They selected the highest quality stones, such as flint, quartzite, and obsidian, for tool production and carefully worked them, giving them the desired shape and sharpness. One of the most outstanding qualities of Neanderthals was their hunting efficiency. They were masters of collective hunting, skillfully cornering and striking down large animals, such as mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, and even cave bears. Such complex activities required not only physical prowess and strength, but also the ability to coordinate actions within the group, plan, and employ strategy. They used spears and, according to some data, projectile weapons, which significantly increased their effectiveness and safety. Another important and unique aspect of their culture was their burial rituals. Archaeologists have uncovered numerous pieces of evidence indicating that Neanderthals deliberately buried their dead. They dug graves, placed the bodies of the deceased in specific positions, sometimes sprinkling them with red ochre, which possibly symbolized life or rebirth. Evidence has also been found that Neanderthals sometimes placed flowers and various objects in the graves, which might have held symbolic significance. This demonstrates a high level of spiritual development and awareness of mortality and the capacity to contemplate the possibility of an afterlife. They also exhibited a high degree of social organization and mutual support. Archaeological findings indicate that they cared for sick, injured, and elderly members of their society, helping them to survive and providing for them even when they were unable to hunt or care for themselves. Such social mutual aid required developed emotional and social intelligence, the capacity for empathy, and an understanding of the importance of community bonds. However, approximately 40,000 years ago, Neanderthals began to gradually disappear. By about 35,000 years ago, this species had completely died out. The reasons for their extinction remain a subject of intense scientific debate. One of the most prevalent hypotheses suggests that a combination of factors influenced the disappearance of Neanderthals. Approximately 50,000 years ago, members of our own species, Homo sapiens, began their active migration from Africa into Europe and Asia. Modern humans possessed a distinct set of advantages, including more sophisticated technologies and weaponry, diverse hunting and gathering strategies, and more intricate social and cultural frameworks. Consequently, Neanderthals found themselves in fierce competition for territory and resources, gradually yielding their ground. Another significant factor likely involved climatic shifts occurring towards the end of the last glacial period. These alterations may have led to a decline in animal populations and their migratory patterns, impacting the prey of Neanderthals, complicating their survival, and forcing them to seek new food sources. Finally, genetic research in recent years has confirmed that Neanderthals and modern humans engaged in interspecies interactions, resulting in the gradual assimilation of Neanderthal genes into the broader human population. Modern humans residing outside of Africa carry between 1 and 4% Neanderthal DNA, indicating that their disappearance was not solely due to extinction, but also through a gradual process of interbreeding with Homo sapiens. The earliest Homo sapiens emerged roughly 300,000 years ago in Africa. The most ancient remains of our species have been unearthed in Morocco, as well as in Ethiopia and South Africa. These discoveries reveal that our earliest ancestors already exhibited many traits characteristic of modern humans: a notably high forehead, a relatively rounded skull, refined facial features, and a less robust physique compared to earlier hominin species, though they still retained some more archaic characteristics. Homo sapiens evolved from older African hominid species, such as Homo heidelbergensis. Approximately 800,000 years ago, a common ancestor existed for all three species: Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, and Denisovans. From this shared ancestor, one evolutionary branch led to the emergence of the first Homo sapiens in Africa around 300,000 years ago. Another branch, developing in parallel across Eurasia, gave rise to the Neanderthals and Denisovans. Thus, Neanderthals and Denisovans are more closely related to each other, while sapiens represent a distinct evolutionary lineage. However, the most significant distinction for sapiens lay in their unique cognitive abilities and their capacity for abstract thought. As early as 100,000 years ago, they were crafting sophisticated tools, ornaments, and symbolic objects, such as beads made from shells and ostrich eggs. These artifacts suggest not merely an appreciation for beauty, but also the formation of early concepts of symbolism and possibly spirituality. Archaeological excavations in Africa and the Middle East have yielded a wealth of remarkable findings that illuminate the daily lives of our ancestors. For instance, in Blombos Cave in South Africa, ancient adornments dating back approximately 75,000 years, meticulously fashioned from marine shells, were discovered. Pieces of ochre bearing incised geometric patterns were also found there, representing some of the earliest evidence of human abstract creativity. On the territory of Israel, in School Cave, remains of ancient Homo sapiens, approximately 100,000 years old, were unearthed. These findings demonstrate that humans ventured out of Africa quite early, although mass dispersal commenced later. In the same locations, evidence of ancient dwellings and numerous stone tools were found, attesting to the prolonged and successful occupation of new territories. Equally compelling was the discovery in Kafsa Cave, also in modern-day Israel. Deceased individuals were carefully laid to rest in graves, adorned with ochre and accompanied by specially selected grave goods. This suggests that even then, our ancestors displayed respect for the deceased, possessed developed social connections, and exhibited symbolic thinking. Humans also began to utilize increasingly complex and specialized tools, such as arrows, needles, sewing implements, and even the first musical instruments. During this period, cave painting flourished, becoming a vibrant expression of the creative and aesthetic capabilities of our distant ancestors. It was precisely due to their unique intellectual capacities and social cooperation that Homo sapiens were able to adapt successfully to virtually all conditions. Approximately 60,000 years ago, the second and most extensive wave of Homo sapiens migration out of Africa commenced. Our ancestors rapidly began to populate the territories of Eurasia, Australia, and significantly later, the Americas. These migrations resulted in Homo sapiens becoming the sole human species on the planet, gradually displacing or assimilating their ancient relatives. During their dispersal, our ancestors encountered other human species that had long inhabited Europe and Asia. Among them were the well-known Neanderthals and the less studied but highly enigmatic Denisovans. We have previously discussed Neanderthals. However, it is worth noting that they inhabited Europe and Western Asia long before the arrival of Homo sapiens, and their encounters were bound to be significant. For approximately 15,000 years, the two species coexisted in the same territories, sometimes competing for resources, and at other times interacting peacefully and even interbreeding. As a result of these contacts, modern humans, originating from non-African populations, inherited between 1 and 4% of Neanderthal genes, which continue to influence our immune systems, skin and hair characteristics, and various other traits. Even more intriguing and mysterious, however, were the Denisovans. These were ancient humans whose existence became known only recently, thanks to remarkable discoveries in Denisova Cave, located in the Altai region of Russia. The initial find was made in 2008. Archaeologists uncovered a fragment of a finger bone belonging to a girl who lived approximately 50,000 years ago. The analysis of her DNA caused a genuine sensation. It turned out to be a completely new species of human, previously unknown to science. Despite such a significant discovery, scientists still know very little about the Denisovans. Based on the discovered bone fragments and teeth, it can only be said that anatomically, they were close to Neanderthals, but differed significantly genetically, and were likely short in stature, around 150 centimeters. The analysis indicated that Denisovans and Neanderthals diverged approximately 400,000 years ago, evolving along separate paths and occupying different territories. The culture of the Denisovans also remains poorly understood. However, Some archaeological findings suggest its extraordinary complexity and uniqueness. In Denisova Cave, not only stone tools, but also remarkable works of art and ornaments were found. Among these is the renowned bracelet made of green chloritolite, crafted with a high level of skill approximately 50,000 years ago. The technology used to drill the holes in this bracelet is so precise that it indicates a high degree of mastery and tools that no one expected to find among such ancient people. This discovery revolutionized perceptions of the cultural capabilities of Denisovans and demonstrated that they possessed advanced skills and an appreciation for beauty. How exactly they spread across Asia and reached regions as distant as Oceania remains one of the intriguing mysteries. Judging by the presence of their genes even among inhabitants of Southeast Asian islands, Denisovans or their descendants might have used primitive watercraft to cross sea straits and populate islands. The question of whether direct military conflicts occurred between Homo sapiens and other human species remains open to debate. Direct archaeological evidence of such conflicts has not yet been found. However, some indirect evidence suggests possible tensions and clashes. For example, evidence of injuries and damage has been found on the bones of Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens, although it is impossible to definitively determine whether these were the result of interspecies conflicts or intraspecies disputes. Nevertheless, competition for limited resources, such as hunting territories and caves, could well have led to aggression and localized conflicts between species. Encounters between Homo sapiens and Denisovans, as well as with Neanderthals, were characterized not only by competition for territory and resources, but also by periods of coexistence and even interbreeding. This occurred particularly intensely in Asia and Oceania. Modern inhabitants of Australia, New Guinea, and certain Pacific islands carry up to 6% Denisovan DNA. These genes helped our ancestors adapt to new living conditions, including survival at high altitudes and adaptation to local climates and diseases. However, despite this interaction, Denisovans disappeared entirely approximately 30,000 years ago. The likely causes of their extinction include competition with Homo sapiens for resources and territories, climatic changes, and gradual absorption through interspecies admixture. Another extremely interesting group of ancient humans were the diminutive people from the island of Flores, known in the scientific community as Homo floresiensis. These unusual beings, unofficially nicknamed hobbits by scientists, stand out significantly among other ancient representatives of the human lineage. The hobbits were remarkable for their miniature size. The height of an adult rarely exceeded 1 meter, and their weight seldom surpassed 25 to 30 kilograms. The brain volume of these individuals was extremely small, only about 400 cubic centimeters, comparable to that of Australopithecus. Despite their modest brain size, these diminutive humans demonstrated a high level of intelligence and adapted exceptionally well to the challenging conditions of island life. The remains of the hobbits were first discovered by archaeologists in 2003 in Liangboa Cave on the island of Flores. The most famous find was the skeleton of an adult female who was named Flo. Later, remains of several other individuals were discovered in the same location, along with stone tools, evidence of hearths, and animal bone fragments from the animals these ancient people hunted. All of this confirmed that the diminutive humans were not a random anomaly, but a distinct, well adapted species that thrived on the island for tens of thousands of years. The uniqueness of the Flores people is largely explained by the phenomenon of island dwarfism, an evolutionary process where animals reduce in size due to limited territory and resources. Simultaneously, an inverse phenomenon, gigantism in certain species, developed on the island. Thus, alongside the miniature humans, Flores was inhabited by giant rats, reaching the size of small dogs, enormous storks standing over 1.5 meters tall, and peculiar dwarf stegodon elephants, comparable in size to a large bull. Despite their diminutive size and limited resources, the diminutive humans successfully hunted stegodons and other large animals. Such hunts were complex undertakings, requiring good coordination, collective action, and thoughtful strategy. In addition to the meat of large animals, their diet included a variety of plants, small animals, birds, and marine life, abundant along the island's coast. The hobbits were skilled at crafting stone tools, maintaining fire, and constructing basic shelters. They led complex social lives, which were essential for survival in conditions of limited space and dangerous proximity to predators and large animals. The reasons for the disappearance of the diminutive humans are not fully understood. It is most likely that around 50,000 years ago, this unusual species encountered climatic changes, depletion of food resources, or competition from arriving Homo sapiens representatives. The latter may have played a role in the ultimate extinction of the Flores hobbits. Although many questions still require answers, the diminutive people of Flores Island have forever entered the annals of science as one of the most astonishing examples of how peculiar human evolution can be under conditions of complete geographical isolation. Approximately 12,000 years ago, the last ice age concluded, after which the planet's climate became noticeably milder and warmer. With the onset of glacial melting, vast territories became covered with green plains, dense forests, and fertile lands. It was at this time that the most important and significant event in human history began, shaping the entire future course of our civilization: the Neolithic Revolution. The Neolithic Revolution signifies the transition from a nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyle to a sedentary existence based on agriculture and animal husbandry. This pivotal moment occurred gradually over hundreds, even thousands of years, and first commenced in the so-called Fertile Crescent region of the Middle East, encompassing the territories of modern-day Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Israel. The shift to agriculture was not a sudden invention, but the result of long and gradual observation of the surrounding world. People noticed that plant seeds dropped on the ground germinated and yielded new crops. Gradually, they began to select and intentionally cultivate the most productive varieties of plants, such as barley, wheat, lentils, peas, flax, and various types of legumes. Around the same time, humans began to domesticate animals, initially dogs, which descended from tamed wolves and became loyal companions in hunting, guarding, and daily life. Soon after dogs, the domestication of goats, sheep, and cattle followed, which became not only sources of meat, but also of milk, wool, hides, horns, and bones for creating various items and tools. Among the first domesticated animals were also pigs, which reproduced rapidly and were undemanding to keep, providing humans with a stable food source. These lifestyle changes brought about a veritable revolution in the daily routines of ancient people. whereas the life of hunter gatherers was filled with uncertainty, risk, and the constant need to move in search of food. People now had the opportunity to establish stable settlements and accumulate food reserves. The first permanent villages, such as ancient Jericho and Çatalhöyük in Anatolia around 9,000 years ago, became centers of prosperity, craftsmanship, and trade. Life in these settlements changed significantly. People began to construct sturdy dwellings from clay and stones, erect barns and food storage facilities, and create rudimentary irrigation systems for their fields. With the advent of surplus food, labor specialization began. Some individuals engaged in agriculture, others in animal husbandry, and still others became master craftspeople, producing pottery, leather goods, textiles, and stone tools. Merchants also emerged, exchanging products between settlements and even distant regions. The development of agriculture led to a noticeable increase in population size. Now that food supplies were more stable, communities could support more people. Hunter-gatherer groups, numbering in the dozens, gave way to villages and small towns with populations in the hundreds and thousands. Such concentrations of people fostered more intensive exchange of ideas and technologies, giving a powerful impetus to the development of civilization. One of the most striking pieces of evidence for the success of the Neolithic Revolution are the archaeological findings at Çatalhöyük in Turkey. Here, evidence of houses built tightly together, without streets and with entrances through the roofs, was discovered. Inside the dwellings, people created magnificent wall paintings depicting scenes of hunting, animal domestication, and the first symbolic images reflecting the genesis of religious and mythological beliefs. The figurines of women found there likely served as symbols of fertility and motherhood. The bullhorns incorporated into the house walls may have had ritualistic significance, but the transition to a sedentary lifestyle also had its downsides. For the first time, people encountered the spread of infectious diseases transmitted from domesticated animals. Continuous living in large settlements contributed to epidemics that were virtually non-existent in small hunter-gatherer groups. Furthermore, conflicts over land and resources emerged, leading to the first signs of organized violence and warfare. Archaeological excavations confirm cases of violent death with characteristic injuries that can be attributed to armed conflicts between settlements. Despite the challenges and problems arising from the shift to agriculture, the Neolithic Revolution was a crucial event that shaped all subsequent human history. It made possible the development of large cities, the creation of civilizations, the birth of complex cultures, and ultimately, the formation of modern society. One of the main factors that made us who we are today is our remarkable ability to create and transmit complex ideas and knowledge to each other. The advent and development of language, art, and symbolic thinking played a vital role in this. The earliest traces of conscious symbolism appeared long before the emergence of agriculture and the first civilizations, approximately 50,000 years ago. Even then, our distant ancestors adorned their bodies with necklaces of shells, beads made from ostrich eggs, and other items imbued with special meaning. But the true pinnacle of ancient symbolic creativity was the appearance of the first cave paintings. The most famous examples of ancient cave art are found in the caves of Altamira in Spain and Chauvet in France. Many of these depictions date back approximately 40,000 years. On the walls of these caves, Ancient people depicted realistic hunting scenes and animal figures. Additionally, depictions of human figures, handprints, and enigmatic abstract symbols, whose meaning remains a subject of scientific debate, are found. These paintings are striking not only for their artistic beauty and realism, but also for how finely ancient people perceived the world around them. Natural mineral pigments were used to create these paintings, mixed with water or animal fats. Some paintings were applied with fingers or simple brushes made from twigs and fur. Others were applied using special tubes through which ancient artists sprayed paint onto the walls. However, cave art was not merely a way to decorate a cave or record memorable events. Many researchers believe that these paintings were part of complex rituals and ceremonies associated with hunting and expressed the early religious and mythological beliefs of our ancestors. This marked a crucial step in the development of human consciousness, allowing people to comprehend the world around them through symbols, metaphors, and images. The emergence of the first myths and religions was a natural continuation of this process. The complex world surrounding humans demanded explanations for why the seasons changed, how humans and animals came to be, and what happened after death. Ancient people found answers to these questions in myths filled with images of gods, heroes, and magical creatures. One of the oldest known examples of ritualistic and religious life is the Göbekli Tepe temple complex in modern-day Turkey, estimated to be around 12,000 years old. In this remarkable site, colossal stone pillars with bas-reliefs of animals and abstract symbols, clearly of religious or ritualistic significance, were discovered. This temple is a vivid testament to the fact that ancient people already possess not only developed consciousness, but also the ability to organize collectively to construct such complex and large-scale structures. The emergence of complex myths and religions played a key role in unifying human communities. Shared beliefs and rituals strengthened the internal bonds among community members, fostering a sense of commonality and shared identity, which subsequently led to the creation of the first social institutions and cultural traditions. It was precisely through the development of symbolic thinking, language, and art that people were able to accumulate and transmit knowledge from generation to generation. Gradually, oral tradition gave way to the first attempts to record information on clay tablets and stone slabs. Approximately 5,000 years ago, the earliest written scripts, cuneiform in Mesopotamia and hieroglyphs in ancient Egypt, emerged, marking the dawn of recorded history as we understand it. The advent of writing enabled humankind to preserve its past, codify laws and agreements, track agricultural yields and trade, and document sagas and folklore. This innovation paved the way for the rise of the first advanced civilizations and cultures, which laid the groundwork for contemporary society. And so, our extraordinary journey draws to a close. We embarked on this exploration from the moment of the Big Bang, when all the universe's matter and energy were compressed into a state of near infinite density and heat. Approximately 13,800,000,000 years have elapsed since that singular event. To conceptualize the entire history of the cosmos as a single hour, all known life on Earth appeared only in the final few seconds, and all of human civilization emerged in a mere blink of an eye just before the hour concluded. Despite this incredibly brief time frame, life has traversed a remarkable evolutionary path. From the earliest rudimentary organisms and the peculiar creatures of the Cambrian period to the colossal dinosaurs and ancient mammals, and from small ape like ancestors to astonishingly adaptable and innovative humans. Each phase of this progression was defined by struggle, triumph, and setbacks, groundbreaking discoveries, and perpetual transformation. What is perhaps most astounding about this narrative is that evolution is a ceaseless process. It is occurring right now, within us, and throughout the world around us. We continue to evolve and adapt, shaped by our surroundings, our culture, and technological advancements. Today, humanity not only responds to natural selection, but, for the first time in history, possesses the capacity to consciously influence its own evolutionary trajectory. Genetics, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence present us with extraordinary prospects, while simultaneously imposing a profound responsibility for the future of our species. What will be our next developmental stage? No one can say with absolute certainty. However, one thing is unequivocally clear: the astonishing odyssey, which began with the very first living cell and led to the creation of incredibly complex civilizations and cultures, will undoubtedly persist, unveiling new and captivating horizons before us. Thank you for watching. If you found this video engaging, please remember to give it a like and subscribe to the channel to ensure you don't miss future insightful lectures. Share your thoughts in the comments section below and let us know what topics you'd be interested in hearing about in upcoming episodes. Until we meet again, until we